I just am flabbergasted by this, the majority leader's comments. He said, quote, "I think this piece of legislation is about as weak and senseless as anything that has ever come up on the Senate floor." Well, wouldn't you say that compared to all the other legislation that we're talking about passing, and some of it has some teeth to it, I acknowledge that, but compared to all of that, a constitutional amendment that requires us to live within our means is certainly not a weak piece of legislation.
I would hardly call it weak. Quite to the contrary. Calls for legislation like this date back a couple of hundred years. Thomas Jefferson was arguably the first one to suggest this kind of proposal. He called for it again and again, and those calls have continued throughout most of our history, but they've accelerated in recent decades. They've accelerated because this body has refused to balance its budget, and it's abused its borrowing power to the point where we're now spending more than $1.5 trillion a year, more than we bring in every single year. It's bankrupting our country. We're burying our children under a mountain of debt. We're killing jobs. We're spending money we don't have, and that's wrong. I would hardly call legislation designed to deal with that in a permanent, binding way senseless. And I'm insulted that the majority leader would suggest that this is somehow senseless just because he doesn't like it, because it'll make him less powerful.
Well, I think that's getting to the nub of the matter. I think it's a sense in which, now for a constitutional amendment to pass, it has to have 2/3 vote in the Congress, both houses, and 3/4 of the states. But once passed, no majority leader could come in next year and say, well, yeah, I know I've been in favor of balanced budgets, but I don't want to do it this year. I got more spending I want to occur. It would indeed curb the power of the majority leader and actually some newly constituted Senate to spend more money than the government takes in, would it not?
Yes, it would. It's the whole purpose of the balanced budget amendment is to restrict our power and give that power back to the people where it belongs. The power has been abused here. It's been abused over a prolonged period of time, and it's been abused to a severe degree. This is why the election of 2010 brought about some significant outcomes.